everyone, and welcome you to the Orchard Harvest Conference. My name is Viktória Magyar, and I will be your host for the next 2 days. I'm also one of the main organizers of the event, and we have prepared best passes for everyone to make sure that it's easier for you to contact. And all of the organizers will have a special pass. On the bottom it says organizer or speaker and organizer, so if you have anything that you want to have help with, please don't hesitate to ask them anything. Please allow me to mention 2 important things. One of is the team t-shirt. We prepared this as a memento for you. Since 2014 Seattle, the team t-shirt had an Orchard logo in the center and 2 specific features of the location on the side. This year we chose the Welcome to Fabulous Las Vegas sign and the US Route 66. And the other thing, I would like to also mention our 3 sponsors, Crest Apps, Lombik Technologies and MCCI. And with their donation, we were able to provide you a really special 2-day conference. So a huge thank you for them as well. And let me allow me to show you an outline of our program. After each session, you will have a chance to ask questions and you will have a short break too. Over there on my laptop, you will be able to see when the next presentation starts. And also, we will have a team photo shoot after the panel discussion during the coffee break in the afternoon. And all sessions will be recorded and published on the Orchard YouTube channel. So, I hope you will have a really great time, and let me continue with our first session, which will be a keynote by Zoltán Lehóczky, Managing Director of Lombik. You will hear a review of what happened since last year, milestones and big events, what's in the focus now, and what do we have planned in the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let me switch over to that. And hello everyone.
Is it your real name?
No, I've chosen it as as an artist name.
Hidden, that's you?
That's actually the artist name, yes. But my real name is Zoltán. So I'm Zoltán. Also going under name Piadone, as Sebastian observed. Welcome everyone. It's great to see you here in person again, because it was 7 years since we had last met. We had last met in New York in 2017, and since then we had just a single Harvest conference last year, which was online. It was great, but it was still online, so it's a little bit better to meet all of you in person. So awesome, welcome. And we are actually here from a lot of places around the world. You can see the markers there. There are a lot of markers in Europe, so let me zoom into that a little bit. Because Europe we have smaller countries, so we always like to see ourselves on the map. And there are a lot of markers here on Europe, but not a lot of markers outside in the world. So that probably means that Europe wins, right? Well, to be fair, if we also put the US states on the map, which is kind of necessary, then there are a lot of people from the US. Actually, the majority of people here are from the US. And talking about not just geographies, but also entities and institutions, we have a couple of interesting things here. Of course, there are people from software development agencies. We also have government entities, all the way from municipal to the state to the federal government level as well. So welcome. We also have startups and companies that use Orchard Core for their SaaS offerings. We also have medical providers. Interestingly, as we have seen at Lombik, healthcare is kind of a thing with Orchard Core. I don't know why. And we also have one person from the US Air Force. So, on a completely unrelated note, if you happen to know how I can get a joyride on an F-16 fighter jet, I'm open to suggestions. And there's a very special person who can't be with us here today. Jean-Thierry passed away tragically last Christmas. And this is a huge loss to our community, of course. I remember that when I got the news, back then, I was devastated for days. Jean-Thierry was not just an exceptional developer, but also a very good friend. So, Orchard Core will never be the same without him, but we continue his legacy. And I figure that it would be interesting to see a little bit where Orchard Core is today. So, are we a big community? Are we a small one? Is Orchard Core popular? Are people using it? So what kind of websites it drives? So let's see a bird's eye view of what the system is. And I first asked Google to suggest a couple of open source.NET CMS platforms out there. And it's a good start because there are two honorable mentions. .cms is actually running on Java. Drupal is running on PHP. And there are a couple of non-open source CMSs out there, and it got the logos of Piranha and Orchard Core wrong. But yeah, let's ask AI instead. What are the top open source.NET CMSs out there? And we get a pretty good list now. And let me get into that a little bit more. I wanted to do a comparison of numbers. Of course, it's always a little bit apples to oranges because all systems are different, but I figure that if you are talking about open source.NET CMSs, let's first see some GitHub numbers. And I looked into the number of stars, number of forks, number of collaborators, and issues. Now, you can argue how important these are and what they indicate, but by the number of stars, Orchard Core is number 1. So congratulations everyone, at least as far as popularity goes, measured in GitHub stars, you are part of the community of the most popular .NET open source CMS out there. By the way, Umbraco is second, and Squidex and Headless.NET CMS is third. Number of forks, Orchard Core is trailing behind Umbraco, and number of contributors, again trailing behind Umbraco on the second place, and in the number of issues, Orchard Core is first again. Now, does that mean that Orchard Core has so many problems that people are complaining, or just Orchard Core is so popular that a lot of people have few issues, and that's up? I don't know, but at least I think this is indicative of Orchard Core being used by a lot of people. And by the way, at the bottom I also added ABP. ABP is just so we don't feel too good about ourselves because they have almost 30,000 stars on GitHub, but ABP is not really a CMS. You can of course also argue that Orchard Core is more than a CMS, of course, and ABP is a framework. It has CMS features built on top of it, but it's still a framework. Nevertheless, it's probably a useful comparison to put us into context a little bit. And I also wanted to check how many people use Orchard Core. And it's harder, because you can argue whether those GitHub numbers make sense or are important, but at least we have some concrete numbers, whereas about usage, we don't. There's a system, or there's a service called BuildWith. It pretty much crawls the internet and tries to detect the technologies behind each application, including the CMS, if one is being used. And according to them, Orchard Core runs behind a bit more than 2,000 websites. And to put that into context, it's behind, we are behind Umbraco and also behind DNN, formerly .NET New by far. .NET New blows everyone out of the water here. But of course, we don't know about those sites that don't advertise that they are running on Orchard Core. We don't know about the headless sites. So this is still just, for some relative comparison, the absolute numbers surely don't mean too much. Still, we are in top 3. And by the way, most of the websites running Orchard Core come from the USA, UK, and India. So maybe we should have the next harvest in the UK and then in India. And finally, ABP, by the way, here is way behind, which shows the issue with this methodology because for a framework it's hard to detect whether it's running behind the site. I'm sure there are actually more sites running ABP. And now that we have a little bit of a context about what Orchard Core is, let's talk about what happened last year, because a lot happened last year. Of course, we had releases, 1.7 and patches, 1.8 and patches, and 2.0. Now, that one was a big one. Mike released it 3 days ago or something like that. It's our biggest release yet, by every metric possible. We also had the most contributors, almost 60, going into that. We also had the most commits going on to that and the most files changed. I just said 5,000 plus because that's how many GitHub can indicate, but it's probably more multiple tens of thousands. A lot of files change, at least for the namespace. We are now using file scope namespaces that touch pretty much every file. And in those releases we had a lot of improvements. System text JSON was a huge one. That was a big part of 2.0, and that was why we had so much time between 1.8 and 2.0. It's not something that users would perceive much. Probably a little bit of performance improvement, but otherwise this was necessary for us to move with the wider ecosystem. And a couple of more improvements that I think are noteworthy. There are a lot more, of course. This is just my selection. Admin list is much better, including searching and filtering. We now have two-factor authentication, which is awesome. With email, app, and SMS-based 2FA. We also have indexing improved. Media files can now be indexed, all of them, pretty much. We have Azure AI indexing as well. And speaking of Azure, we also have support for Azure communication services to send emails. So not just SMTP, simple SMTP with password, name and password, but also Azure communication services. And by the way, with this, I think Orchard Core is the most Azure integrated CMS out there. So we have support for media storage in Azure Blob Storage, data protection keyring storage in Azure Blob Storage, Azure Key Vault for secrets, Azure Communication Services, Azure AI Search, Application Insights for telemetry. I hope I'm not missing anything. So it's a pretty complete package, and of course Orchard Core also supports SQL Azure, but that doesn't mean anything special. We also have localization settings for users, which was quite a requested feature. Also secure media, which is important. So previously, if you uploaded a media file, it was always public. Because that's how the media library was meant to be used. But now, we also have the secure media feature, so you can select authorization options for specific files, specific folders. And you also have workflow trimming. So previously, when workflow was executed, that data of the workflow instances was perpetually collected in the database and never deleted. Now, one of our clients uses workflows heavily. They have forms being sent in every day for a lot of locations, a lot of people, and their database grew to almost 20 gigabytes. And it was pretty much all workflows that we didn't need. So the workflow trimming feature cleans those up automatically. And we had 58 contributors to 2.0 for 2.0, so we can't really single out specific people, but I think it's still nice to have some special recognition for the top 10 contributors. So in the last year, these were the top 10 contributors, and the first one is Mike. So thank you very much. Second is Hisham. Unfortunately, Hisham is not with us today. He's from Yemen. We also have Antoine among the top people, and Antoine I don't see that. Oh, Antoine is just there. So congratulations. The next one is yours truly, and then Sebastian. And then Sebastian, you are number 5. Congratulations. Now, unfortunately, the second half of this list can't be here with us today. Starting with Jean Thierry, I'm sure that Jean Thierry would be much higher hasn't he stopped contributing in January, because actually his last pull request merge was the system tag JSON migration. So even after his passing, we got a contribution from him. Now, the present question, I think, is that where do we go from here? So what are the next steps for Orchid Core? Because it's okay, we can improve always, we can always keep up to date with the wider ecosystem, but what else? And I won't be able to tell you answers. I definitely won't tell you what we should do. But a couple of things that we talked about, at least. And we talked about 2.1 and 3.0. Now, for 2.1, we talked about having a focus on quality. Because Orchid Core, what I always hear from people working with Orchid Core, with the code of Orchid Core, is that the code is beautiful. It's great, it's structured so well, I learned so much. And that's a very unique thing, and that's a very unique strong point of Orchid Core, I think, that we should keep. But the more contributions we have, the harder it is to guard the code quality. And not just the code quality, but the quality overall. So something that people tell about less so is, for example, how nice the UI is, because that's something that we can improve. And we of course always have bugs, and we of course always have performance issues. But for all of that, I think we should have more automated quality assurance. Because currently we have a lot of unit tests, but they don't cover everything. We have like 5 functional tests, we have very little static call analysis, and pretty much that's it. I think we should have a lot more static call analysis, plug the gaps in unit testing, have a lot more UI tests, and then we can be pretty sure that when there's a contribution and the build is green, that is actually correct. Currently, it's a lot more manual. So that's for 2.1 and for 3.0. Now, one big thing that we have in 2.0 currently is semantic versioning. Just before going into that, a quick show of hands. Who is here on 2.0 already, or one of the latest previews? Okay, a couple of people. Staying on the bleeding edge. 1.8? Okay, that's a lot more. 1.7? Anything before 1.7? No. Okay, so it seems that's just fine. 1.8 is probably the most popular, which is great because you are staying up to date. Now, well, 2.0 will hurt a little bit. Sorry about that. Upgrading to that. But after 2.0, we want to make that easier. Because with semantic versioning, what will happen after this is that when there's 2.1 after 2.0, you can be sure that there are no breaking changes. Well, at least we aim to have no breaking changes, consciously. And with something like 2.0.1 after 2.0.0, there should be only bug fixes. And that's pretty much what Semver is about. And we didn't follow that before. But with 2.0, now we have a clean state, and after it, we will follow semantic versioning. So it will be easier for you to upgrade to 2.1 and 2.2, if you'll have that. And with 3.0, we'll break things again, but only what's necessary, and pretty much everything I think that we intend to break currently is already obsolete in 2.0. So you'll get the build warnings and everything. Long story short, we'll have a better release story going forward, I think. And finally, I only have questions here. Questions that I think we as a community should discuss in the coming year about growth. Because we have seen that Orchid Core wins the popularity contest, but it's not the CMS, the open source .NET CMS platform out there that runs the most websites. Do we want it to run the most websites, or at least more? Which direction do we want to improve the system? Do we want to have more features or more capabilities in the existing features? Do we want to improve the quality of those features instead of adding new ones? So probably better user experience, fix those bugs. How do we grow those features? Do we want to have more contributors? Do you want to have more maintainers, those contributors who can commit to the repository, or do you want to have more external contributors, more occasional contributors? Because of course, most of the people from this 58.4.2.0, they are ad hoc, external, occasional contributors. Do you want to have more users otherwise, nicer metrics on GitHub? Now, I don't know, and I don't know where to focus, but I think this is one of the discussions that we can have, should have in the next year, and make Orchard go into a direction that we all want, including selecting those areas where we want to grow. But that's something that we have to hash out together. Now, thank you very much. That was it for me, and let's have an awesome conference.